Most people believe the rat race is about money. They think if they just earned more, saved more, invested better, they'd be free. But here is the uncomfortable truth no one wants to say out loud. Some of the hardest working, highest-earning people on Earth are the most trapped. Doctors, lawyers, engineers, executives, people who made it. They wake up early, they go to work, they do everything right. And yet, they feel like time is slipping through their fingers. So the real question isn't, how do I make more money? The real question is, why does the system seem to need you tired, distracted, and dependent just to function? Because the rat race isn't an accident. It wasn't created by laziness, and it wasn't caused by poor budgeting. It was designed not by a single villain, not by a secret cabal, but by incentives, institutions, and feedback loops that quietly reward obedience and punish independence. And once you see how the machine actually works, you'll never unsee it. But before we talk about escaping the rat race, we need to understand where it came from. The phrase rat race sounds modern. It feels like something invented in the age of cubicles, emails, and open-plan offices. But the idea is far older. For most of human history, people didn't work jobs. They worked seasons. If you were a farmer, your labor followed the sun. If you were a craftsman, your output depended on skill, not hours clocked. Work was tiring, but it was finite. That changed with one invention. Not the computer, not the internet, not even the factory. It changed with the wage, when time itself became a commodity, when hours were separated from outcomes, when survival became dependent not on what you produced, but on whether someone else approved your continued participation. This was the birth of a system that didn't just organize labor, it organized behavior. And once money, debt, education, and identity became tightly coupled, the race began. But it didn't start as a trap. In fact, at first, it looked like progress. In the late 1700s and early 1800s, industrialization solved a real problem. Agricultural life was brutal. Famine was common. Illness meant death. Work was uncertain. Factories offered something revolutionary: predictable income, centralized production, scale. For the first time, a person could sell their labor and reliably survive. But there was a trade. You no longer controlled your time, your pace, your output. The clock replaced the sun, and slowly, subtly, identity shifted. You weren't a baker anymore. You were a factory worker. You weren't defined by what you made. You were defined by where you showed up. As factories scaled, they needed workers who could follow instructions, arrive on time, tolerate repetition, obey authority. So modern schooling evolved to meet demand. Rows of desks, bells, standardized testing, punishment for deviation. Education wasn't about curiosity. It was about compliance, and the promise was clear. Do well in school, get a good job, and you'll be safe. Safety became the ultimate currency. After World War II, something critical changed. Governments wanted growth. Banks wanted lending. Corporations wanted consumers. So debt was normalized. Mortgages, student loans, car payments, credit cards. Debt did something powerful. It pulled future labor into the present. You weren't just working for today. You were working for decisions you made years ago. And once monthly obligations exceeded savings, choice quietly disappeared. You couldn't just walk away. You had bills. As incomes rose, expectations rose faster. A bigger house became normal. A new car became standard. Vacations became proof of success. But each upgrade increased. Fixed costs, dependency, fear of loss. The race accelerated not because people were greedy, but because standing still felt like falling behind. At first, the system works. You're motivated, you're climbing. You're told stress is temporary. Then something shifts. You realize promotions don't buy freedom, they buy responsibility. Raises disappear into higher expenses. Time feels scarcer every year, and the scariest realization of all, if you stop running, everything collapses. Your lifestyle, your identity, your sense of worth. Burnout isn't a bug, it's a predictable outcome. The system extracts maximum productivity until resistance appears, then replaces the worker. And this is where people start asking dangerous questions. Anxiety, depression, chronic stress, a feeling of being behind even when successful. People blame themselves. I should be more disciplined. I should want this. I must be doing something wrong. But when millions feel the same exhaustion, the problem isn't individual failure. It's structural design. Budgeting doesn't solve. Wage ceilings, time scarcity, lack of leverage. You can't spreadsheet your way out of a structural trap. Passion without ownership still equals dependency. If your income depends on permission, you're still in the race, just with a different uniform. Today, technology has made the rat race faster, not freer. Emails follow you home. Algorithms measure performance. Side hustles replace rest. We're more productive than ever, yet feel less secure. The pattern is repeating. Centralization, dependency, debt, burnout, different tools, same incentives. So how do people actually escape the rat race? Not temporarily, not spiritually, but structurally. The answer isn't quitting your job tomorrow. It isn't winning the lottery, and it isn't working harder. It starts with understanding one uncomfortable truth. Freedom is not about income. It's about leverage, optionality, and control. And that's where the real story begins. Up to this point, everything Olivier talked about has focused on how the rat race forms, how it pulls people in, how it accelerates, how it convinces intelligent, capable adults that exhaustion is normal. But here is the twist most people never see coming. The rat race does not trap people equally. Two people can earn the same salary, work the same hours, live in the same city, and yet 10 years later one feels cornered, while the other feels calm. Not because of luck, not because of talent, but because of structure. To understand escape, we need to stop talking about money the way the system wants us to talk about money, and start talking about leverage. The system trains us to think in one dimension. If I just make more money, everything will work out. And for a while, that seems true. Your first raise feels like relief. Your first big paycheck feels empowering. But then something subtle happens. Your income rises. And so does your baseline. More responsibilities, more expectations, more fixed costs. What actually increased wasn't freedom, it was throughput. You became a larger cog, and the system loves high-throughput cogs because they produce more value, consume more products, carry more debt, have more to lose. This is why high earners often feel more trapped than low earners. They're not lazy. They're overloaded. Instead of asking, how much do you make? Ask 3 different questions. 1, how dependent are you on your next paycheck? 2, how much of your time do you truly control? 3, how easily can you change direction without collapse? These questions expose something income never will. Optionality is the ability to say no. No to a bad boss. No to a draining project. No to a life that feels wrong. And optionality doesn't come from working harder. It comes from leverage. Leverage is any system where your output is no longer directly tied to your hours. There are only a few kinds that matter. Capital leverage, co-leverage, media leverage, systems leverage. Wage labor has no leverage. You stop, working income stops. That's the core constraint of the rat race. And escaping it means gradually shifting from I trade time for money to I build or own something that works without my constant presence. But this is where most advice goes wrong. This is one of the fastest ways back into the rat race. Just with panic added, abrupt exits increase, financial stress, bad decision making, dependency on the next opportunity. True escape is rarely dramatic. It is incremental. Most passive income isn't passive. It's front-loaded labor, hidden risk, and constant maintenance. Worse, many people build new jobs. They can't leave just without benefits. The problem wasn't employment. The problem was lack of control. People don't escape the rat race when they earn more. They escape when their downside shrinks, when missing a paycheck no longer feels like a cliff, when time off doesn't trigger panic, when choices expand instead of contract. And this usually starts with one unglamorous move: reducing fixed obligations. Not budgeting harder, not hustling more, but lowering the minimum income required to survive. This flips the power dynamic. In negotiations, the person who needs the deal least has the most power. The same is true in life. If your survival requires a specific salary, a specific city, a specific lifestyle, you are negotiable. But when your needs shrink, options grow. This is why many people feel freer before their biggest promotions. They had less to lose. Most long-term escape stories follow the same pattern. Phase 1. Awareness. You realize the system isn't broken, it's optimized. Phase 2. Stabilization. You reduce volatility, build savings, lower fixed costs. Phase 3. Parallel building. You keep your main income but start building leverage on the side. Not to get rich quick, but to buy time. Phase 4. Optionality. You don't quit because you're desperate. You leave because staying no longer makes sense. The timeline varies, the pattern does not. At the core of escape is a single distinction. Do you own the output, or are you renting your labor? Ownership doesn't require a startup, $1 million. Viral success, it requires alignment between effort and upside. Even small ownership beats high wages in the long run. Why? Because ownership compounds, wages reset every pay period. Here is the part no one likes to hear. Escaping the rat race often feels like falling behind at first. Your income might plateau. Your status might drop. Your progress might look invisible because you're switching games and the old scoreboard no longer applies. Most people turn back here, not because they were wrong, but because the silence scared them. So, if escape isn't about quitting, and it isn't about grinding, and it isn't about chasing passive income fantasies, then what actually works? 2. Unswear. Tat. We need to look at real people, not gurus, not influencers. Ordinary individuals who escaped slowly, quietly, and structurally. Some succeeded, some failed, some nearly made it and fell back in. Their stories revealed patterns the system doesn't advertise. And that's where we're going next. Up to now, everything has been theoretical. We've talked about systems, incentives, structures that quietly shape behavior. But systems don't feel real until you watch what they do to actual people. So instead of more concepts, this section follows 3 real archetypal stories, not famous names, not viral success stories, but paths repeated millions of times across different lives. Each story answers a different question. Is it possible to escape without quitting your job? Why do so many people escape once, then fall back in? What does a slow, unsexy, durable escape actually look like? And most importantly, what separates the people who get out from the people who don't? At 29 years old, Daniel was doing everything right. Good degree, good company, good salary. From the outside, his life looked stable, envy-worthy, even. But internally, something felt off. Not dramatic, not catastrophic, just a persistent sense that time was being exchanged for something that never arrived. Daniel's career followed the textbook path. Graduate junior, error role, promotion, raise. Each step was supposed to unlock the next level of satisfaction. But instead, each promotion came with longer hours, more responsibility, less mental space, and something else he didn't expect, less labor. He became harder to replace, but also harder to move. The more specialized he became, the more dependent his lifestyle became on that exact role. This is a quiet trap. Specialization increases income, but decreases flexibility. The turning point didn't come from burnout. It came from comparison. Daniel noticed something strange. People who joined the company after him, sometimes with less experience, were negotiating better terms. Not because they were smarter, but because they needed the job less. Some had savings. Some had side income. Some lived cheaply. Daniel didn't. His expenses had quietly scaled with his salary, and for the first time, he saw the real constraint. He couldn't say no. Instead of quitting, Daniel did something counterintuitive. He stopped optimizing for growth. He optimized for resilience. He froze lifestyle upgrades, paid down fixed obligations, built a cash buffer. Not because he wanted to be frugal forever, but because he wanted room to maneuver. This took 2 years. No Instagram posts, no dopamine hits. Just quiet, boring progress. And then something changed. With pressure reduced, Daniel started building something small. Not a startup, not a hustle empire. A narrow, boring, unsexy product, solving a specific problem in his industry. He worked on it after work, but not obsessively. Why? Because urgency kills judgment. After 18 months, it made a fraction of his salary. But here's what mattered. It paid him without permission. That changed everything. Daniel didn't quit dramatically. Negotiated reduced hours. Consulting arrangement, remote flexibility. Why did it work? Because his dependency had dropped. He wasn't bluffing. If the deal failed, he would have been fine. That's leverage. Within 3 years, his job became optional, not because he got rich, but because his downside disappeared. Daniel didn't escape by earning more. He escaped by lowering his baseline, increasing optionality, building ownership slowly. The system didn't notice. That's the point. If Daniel's story is quiet and controlled, this one is chaotic. Maria escaped the rat race fast and paid for it. Maria was miserable in her job. She felt stuck, underutilized, invisible. So when an opportunity appeared, a fast-growing online business model, she jumped. She quit her job within 6 months. Revenue came quickly. So did validation. For the first time, she controlled her schedule. She answered to no boss. She felt alive. From the outside, she had escaped. But here's what changed beneath the surface. Maria didn't escape the rat race. She changed tracks. Instead of one boss, she had customers, algorithms, platforms. Instead of fixed hours, she had constant anxiety, unpredictable income, no safety net. Her income was higher. Her optionality was lower. Then something shifted. A platform policy changed. Costs rose. Revenue dipped. Maria did what the system trained her to do. She worked harder, more hours, more stress, more sacrifice. But leverage was missing. Her business depended entirely on conditions she didn't control. Within 2 years, she was exhausted. Within 3, she was back in a job. This time, more cautious, more skeptical, more tired. Maria didn't fail because she lacked discipline. She failed because she traded one dependency for another. She optimized upside without protecting downside. She mistook autonomy for control. Escape without resilience is temporary. The third story looks boring. That's why it works. Ethan never quit dramatically, never chased trends, never went viral. He worked a normal job, lived modestly, saved aggressively. But his focus wasn't returns. It was survivability. He asked one question repeatedly. What keeps me in the game no matter what happens? Instead of maximizing gains, Ethan diversified income streams, avoided fixed obligations, kept expenses far below earnings. He didn't rush. Years passed, then decades, and one day, without a single moment of drama, work became optional. Not because of brilliance, but because nothing could knock him out. Escape favors those who can wait. The system rewards patience, not brilliance. All three stories reveal the same underlying truth. The rat race isn't escaped through intensity. It's escaped through asymmetry. Small moves that reduce downside, increase leverage, compound quietly. And here's the part most people miss. Escape often looks like stagnation from the outside. That's why it's rare. Escaping the rat race isn't just financial. It's psychological. You lose external validation, clear milestones, social comparison. There are long stretches where nothing seems to happen, and the system is very good at pulling people back during those stretches. With promotions, with praise, with fear. There is a moment of fun years into the process where escape feels impossible, progress feels invisible, sacrifice feels pointless, doubt creeps in. This is the most dangerous phase, not because you're wrong, but because you're early. Most people quit here, not realizing they were closer than they'd ever been.